Welcome to History Where It Happened. Let's get right to the point of this show. How much work do you think is involved in changing this light bulb? It's an ordinary 90-watt light bulb. It can be bought at local electronics stores, Walmart, Kmart, wherever. It's very easy, very common, it's incandescent. Well, it takes a lot more work than most people think. The problem is that this bulb is located at the top of the Bennington Battle Monument, the tallest man-made structure in Vermont, 306 feet up there. And that's really the subject of our show. We're going to show you how this bulb is changed, and if we're lucky, we'll get a tour by the site administrator, Mary Lou Chakotay, who will give us a tour down the stairs, and then we'll come back here and point out some points of interest, give you a little history of the Bennington Battle Monument, and so on. I think you'll find the show interesting. So let's go get organized and then go up to the top. But one last thing, I'm not going up to the top. I know my limits. So other people are going up there to change, but we'll have cameras. It will also be dark, but the lighting is okay for regular use, but it does require extra lighting, a little extra lighting for cameras and everything. So let's go get organized and let's go change the bulb.
Well, today is changing of the airport lights. It's a process that's done every 333 days. The airport, Bennington Airport, is 3 miles down the road to the west of us. And the lights at the top are airport lights. They're part of the landing pattern for the airport. So they have to be on at all times. So we change them a little early so they don't run out before they're...
And who's the guy you're training today?
Today we're training Charlie.
Charlie, have you been out there yet?
Not to the very top, not to the start.
So this day when you're climbing out there and climbing up the ladder, that's the first time for you?
Yeah.
120 some years, we haven't lost anybody yet.
That's right, so you're a good hand.
It's a repelling harness, and it's a safety harness that holds the body if by chance someone would fall. This braces them so that there's no damage to the back or, you know, anything. And as we go up the ladder, it's just an extra safety gear. The ladder's about 60 feet up, and it's 60 feet, approximately. I've counted the rungs, but I forget all the time. Maybe I'll count them on the way down. Hey, I can see the top. I am almost there. in 1891, no, it was 1889, they laid the capstone in November. The capstone is at the top here. They had an outside elevator that certain dignitaries that were involved with the building of the monument rode up in the outside elevator and put the capstone on a cold day in November. So people ask if we're afraid of doing this. Not compared to that. The stone is dolomite, came from Sandy Hill Quarries in Hudson Falls, New York. They brought it here by a train, cut the stones on site. Took them 2 years to build the stonework. When I took this job, I wasn't told it was my job to change the light bulb. It was my job to make sure it gets changed. So that's what we're doing. Then they gave me the name of the woman who changed the light bulb, and I kind of thought if she could do it, I could do it. Top of the world, calling Kevin. Kevin, if you hear me, you can turn on the light bulbs.
10-4.
Okay, mission accomplished. The lights are on, the planes can land. Charlie's gonna come down and I'll go up so this camera can videotape exactly what the light bulbs look like.
All right, 10-4.
And then I'm done. Below us is a spiral staircase. This only goes down one level to what is called the anteroom. Before the elevator, this was the only way to get up and down. The monument opened in 1891. From 1891 till the mid-1950s, there was no elevator. This was not here. So from here, you could look all the way down and you could look all the way up. In the 50s, the state took over the ownership, and the first thing they did is put the glass in the windows in the observation floor, and they put the elevator in. Up until 1970, you had the choice. You could do the elevator or the steps. And around the 70s became the age of litigation, and they closed off the steps because Steps are dangerous. These are just as dangerous as your basement steps. Now the steps are called easy steps. The architect, J. Philip Rinn, was a hefty man, and he searched all over the world to find steps that everybody or anybody could do. He came up with this design, and he found it in a castle in Italy, the Farnese Castle. The architect of that castle was Vignola, who was a famous, infamous architect who worked with Michelangelo. So legend has it that Michelangelo designed these steps, or steps similar to these. You can find it, they're 4.5 inches high, 18 inches wide, and they're on a slight angle so that it's closer to walking a ramp than it is to doing Jane Fonda's step aerobics. Now they're cast iron. They're very sturdy. The steps themselves are not in danger of falling down, but the reason they're not open to the public, besides the fact that people could fall up or down, is the railings are wider than safety would want them. So small people and thin people could fall through if it was open. One of the problems with historic places is graffiti. And graffiti dates back to the early 1900s. We have what I call early graffiti. Here's Corliss. I think the year here is 1946. Yep, 1946. What people may not be aware of is graffiti is a felony. It is not a misdemeanor. Defacing historic sites is actually a criminal act. The door over here is one of the landings. If needed, if the elevator stops, there is a hand crank that the elevator can be cranked up to one of these doors and special keys open it and the people can get out. That is something that is only done by the fire department and rescue squad, just for safety reasons. But it can be done. People fear getting stuck in elevators, but anybody who's stuck isn't stuck for more than an hour. We get you out quick, and it only happens once every 20 years. There's also a musical tone to the steps. I don't know if you can hear it. When we have the race with the Lung Association, it's just like a musical instrument, hearing dun, 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 dun. Here, that's an ancient heating system. They heated the monument at one time. They stopped it in the 70s when they had the oil embargo. I think it is way above anyone's budget now to heat it. Probably the whole state of Vermont was warmer when this was heated. It does get quite cold in here in the winter. Part of my winter job is to run the elevator so that the chains don't get frozen in one place. And when I run the elevator, I walk up the steps and just run it up and down a couple of times. And I've been here when they're completely coated with ice. The stone is white from frost. For those old enough to remember the world of Dr. Zhivago, that's what it always reminds me of. This just shows the thickness, because the glass window is only halfway. There's still as much monument on the other side. It's double stone, double headers and leaders, I think they called it. There's an engineer among us, he may know. Kind of like Legos. They cut stones that two went side by side this way, then two on top this way, and that way, and this way.
And is it limestone from the outside all the way in?
Yeah, yeah. And in the center, they said they filled in with the cuttings from the stones. They cut the stones right on site and cut them, and then the excess stone was filled in between. As far as how sturdy is the monument, it does not sway, has never swayed. We do have a engineering thesis, and it talks about what velocity of wind would be needed, and it is nothing that we see, at least not yet. Now we're getting near the ground level, and there's a platform here. This is to keep the stone off the visitor's level, there's such a thing as spalding, which means pieces of the stone will break off and fall. And spalding is something that all stone buildings have to deal with. Little chunks of stone or even the mortar, you can see some down there. But this is put in just to protect the people that are down below. And here we are. Civilization.
Although today's show is primarily about the physical monument itself, I thought it'd be helpful to give just a quick background of why this monument is here, the Bennington Battle Monument. And basically it was the case of John Burgoyne coming down from Canada to split the colonies, came down, recaptured Fort Ticonderoga, worked his way down towards Saratoga and Albany. He ran out of supplies, so he sent some Hessians over to capture the storehouse for the Northern Army, and that storehouse is where we are today. In the meantime, while he's moving south from Manchester, they sent a letter to New Hampshire requesting help. And this man, General John Stark, who was in the Battle of Bunker Hill, came out of retirement and brought 1,000 troops into Manchester and then said, I can help the colonists by moving south to Bennington. And he made his headquarters at the Catamount Tavern, south, just 50 yards south of here, sent his troops out about 2 miles, camped, and then after about 5 days, established another camp. About 5 miles out, he engaged the British, and it was a resounding American victory. And that's why this monument is here, because that victory kept the supplies from getting to Burgoyne, and 2 months later he surrendered at Saratoga, and many think that's the turning point of the Revolutionary War. So it was all due to this person, John Stark. And just as a further little background, almost trivia, if you've ever seen the license plate in New Hampshire, live free or die. I mean, John Stark is New Hampshire's Ethan Allen. John Stark lived to be about 94, I think, and he was asked back for a reunion of the Battle of Bennington veterans. And he said because of health or age, I'm not sure which, he couldn't make the trip from New Hampshire here to Bennington. So he wrote a letter, and in that letter he said, respectfully declined, but said, let me propose a toast. And that toast was, live free or die, death is not the worst of evils. And the state of New Hampshire adopted that right after World War II, and that's why it's on the license plate. So there's a little Vermont in that. Before we continue with the actual construction, there is another little segment on history. It's more trivia, but it should be of interest. And the year was 1927. Charles Lindbergh, after he flew solo to Paris, made a trip around the United States in his Spirit of St. Louis. And he landed at Springfield Airport on July 27th. He then came down here from Springfield via Brattleboro, and Charles Lindbergh flew over the monument. He arrived, they say, at about 2:47. He flew low, he did circles, and then he left at 2:55. So he actually gave a lot of respect to this monument and the village of Bennington. That was about 8 minutes that he flew. And why here? Well, 1927 was a big year. It happens to be, and I hope I get this right, the sesquicentennial 150th anniversary of the Battle of Bennington. And there was a stamp issued, and that was in 1927. Something else happened in 1927 too. 2 months after the Battle of Bennington, Burgoyne, as I had mentioned before, surrendered at Saratoga. Another stamp, a U.S. stamp, was issued. So those were two big events. And if you're into Vermont history, 1927, of course, was also the big year of the flood, which had nothing to do with this. But anyway, that was Charles Lindbergh flying over this monument in 1927. Now let's go see some points of interest. We're on the southeast corner of the Bennington Battle Monument. There's a little mystery here. Most of the people I've spoken to seem to think, but it's never been confirmed, that the cornerstone is right here, that this is the cornerstone. However, I heard some other opinions too, that since they hit bedrock at 15 feet down, that the cornerstone might actually be lower. But the interesting thing at the time was that they had, and it was laid in August 16th, 1887, again the anniversary of the August 16th Bennington Battle Day, with a Masons ceremony, a very full Masons ceremony. The Masons, as tradition has it, puts in what I would consider a time capsule. They had 50 or 100 items. There's a complete list of what's in there. Some things from the Bennington Museum, Bennington Historical Society, Vermont Historical Society, local newspapers, and so on. But that's a little mystery. Where is the cornerstone? But most people seem to think it's on the southeast corner right here. Now we're going to go about 50 yards from the monument itself to another marker over here. This marker, a lot of people don't see it because it's behind a bush, but it has a little significance here, and it's somewhat interesting given Vermont history. The marker is for Anthony Haswell, 1756 to 1860. He's somewhat of an interesting person. He was actually in the Sons of Liberty, and he came to Vermont as the Postmaster General of the of Vermont, and that was before Vermont became a state. So he was the postmaster of an independent country. What is also interesting is he was very active in the Masons. His son was very active in the Masons. I forget his name. Nathan Baldwin Haswell was one of the leaders of the Masons. And there's a lot of Masons, when you talk about the Masons, in this monument. When they lifted the capstone up to the top, the final piece of stone that went in, a Mason's flag flew over that. When they put in the cornerstone, it was done with a Mason ceremony. The actual monument itself has some Masonic touches to it, the obelisk. It's very close to the sun, and that's very appropriate because the Battle of Bennington, John Stark started it around noon, but the actual battle started at 3 o'clock, and the whole theory was after the rain, when the sun came out, it would dry the powder, and they could go ahead and attack, and hopefully the British or the Hessians' powder would not be dry. So there's a lot of Masons in this. And when we go inside, we go upstairs, you'll see that there's an actual emblem of the Masons inside. I'm now at the entrance of the Bennington Battle Monument. Now if you visit the monument, and we certainly hope you'll do, I hope you notice the thickness of the walls. From here to here is 7.6 feet. And actually down before they hit bedrock, the base stone is 9 feet. Another feature is this beautiful door. The original door was apparently oak, and it was replaced with this door. Now out here, you notice how blank that is. Well, the monument isn't finished yet. The original plans called for 3 heads to be put up there, either here or inside, I'm not sure exactly which. One of John Stark from New Hampshire, one of Seth Warner from Vermont, and one from Reverend Thomas Allen from Pittsfield, Massachusetts, the Fighting Parson. They were supposed to be put up here, but they were never finished. The other thing to notice is this geological survey, I guess they call it an altitude marker, 873 feet. Well, that seems insignificant. But when you think about it, the Bennington Battle Monument is 306. 306 plus 873 is over 1,100, if I did my math right. That actually means that it's higher, not taller, it's higher than the Washington Monument. The Washington Monument is actually taller, but it's not as high. And that's why when you see the spectacular view, you're way up. We're 873 feet higher. They have a wonderful exhibit here. It's almost a mini museum. For instance, on this wall is a progressive picture of the building of the monument, and it shows the monument 2/3 filled or finished, 1/3 finished, and so on. Over here is a diorama. It's got some the Battle of Bennington, August 16th, 1777. They've got miniature soldiers here from the battle, and along the walls are some very interesting quotes. One of the displays I wanted to show was here in the base of the Bennington Battle Monument, which is very interesting, and every Vermonter should appreciate this. It was General John Burgoyne, August 26th, 10 days after the Battle of Bennington. His quote to his boss in England after the resounding defeat was, "The Hampshire Grants, Vermont, in particular, a country unpeopled and almost unknown in the last war, the French and Indian War, now abounds in the most active and most rebellious race of the continent and hangs like a gathering storm on my left." In other words, Burgoyne was coming down the Champlain Valley towards Saratoga, and his left was the New Hampshire Grants. And this is a well-known quote in Vermont. Over here is also a display of all the designs of the monument before it was selected. The driving force of this whole monument was Highland Hall, who was governor of Vermont from 1858 till 1860. He was also president of the Vermont Historical Society during the Civil War. But he was the driving force with fundraising and dedication. Unfortunately, he died before the cornerstone was even laid. But whenever you talk about the monument, it's Highland Hall. And he was also the first president of the Bennington Historical Society. We're now in the observation room of the Bennington Battle Monument. I just want to point out a couple of things. It's very hard to see, but up above the windows are plaques. There are 4 of them, one on each north, south, east, and west. This particular plaque is the Masons. And as I mentioned, Masons have a big influence with the cornerstone and so on, and the design of the obelisk itself. The other plaque over there is for the Vermont Historical Society, and Highland Hall's name is there. The other 2 plaques over here, one is the Odd Fellows, and one is the Grand Army of the Republic. One other thing I just wanted to point out is this wire. That's the wire, there's one on each side. That's the wire for the lightning rod. When they were changing the bulb was under the star at the top of the Bennington Battle Monument. And it's actually for lightning. And lightning, the wires are on both sides. They run the full length of the monument.
Okay, this is our guest sign-in book. Over in this case, we have a sign-in book from exactly 100 years ago to the day. August 1914, here we go with August 5th and 6th. We've had people actually find names of people they recognized, either somebody's grandmother or we had a family reunion called the Hildreth Family Reunion, and this is true. They were here September 12th, 2012. On September 12th, 1912, a Hildreth from Agawam, Mass., which is where the family originated, had signed the book.
Well, that basically concludes our show for today, our episode. But I just had a couple more comments. One is that there are some other reminders of the Bennington Battle Monument around. For instance, out in Port Loma, which is near San Diego, there is a smaller obelisk just like this, and it used to be called the Bennington National Cemetery, and now it's part of Fort Rosecrans. There's another small obelisk, very small, maybe 10 feet, up in Peru, Vermont, where John Stark, on his way to Bennington, camped. There are also some other reminders around. One of the other reminders is the bell from the USS Bennington, the aircraft carrier, is down in opposite the town offices here in Bennington. It's very beautiful. So if you come here, also explore the other areas of Bennington. And in concluding, I would really like to thank Mary Lou Cicotti for giving us a tour and letting us film her and the crew of changing the bulb here. It was wonderful of it. It's a wonderful historic site. They have reenactments here. She has charity runs. The place comes alive. The Vermont Division of Historic Preservation has done an excellent job of preserving this site. The people who work here are very knowledgeable. the staff. One of the people here, in fact, is on the Vermont Historical Society, a trustee. So if you have any questions, just come here. It's a wonderful place. Check their website. They also created on their own Friends of the Monument. So it's a very active area, and you can see because they get 40 to 50,000 visitors here a year. It's a real Vermont treasure. Well, that does it for this episode. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope to see you next time.